Oh, it looks like we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome,
Hey,
welcome to Unveiled and another Q&A live stream. Today, I am joined by Darcy Weir. How are you, Darcy?
good. How are you, Rob?
Very well, thank you. As well as Mark D'Antonio from MUFON and Skytour Livestream. How are you, Mark?
Good, good. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
It's nice to speak with you both. So we just premiered a doc that Darcy created on Three Eye Atlas, which has been the talk of the town in people interested in outer space for the past few months. No
Yep,
shortage of debates over this object.
that's true.
And so we're going to be digging into it a little bit today. We have had three interstellar objects enter our solar system, Oumuamua, Borisov, and now Three Eye Atlas.
Yeah,
So let's just kick it off about what the controversy is about this one in particular. Let's start with you, Mark.
sure. I mean, one of the things to understand about interstellar objects is that we haven't seen many, as you pointed out, only three. Now, comets, thousands, millions of comets, perhaps in our Oort cloud around our solar system, the cloud of the realm of the comets, right? And so, in that particular uh, perspective, we know kind of what the comets in our solar system are made of because we've had enough of them come through. They were made from the same stuff that everything else is made from in our solar system. But interstellar comets and interstellar objects come from a different star system, and the chemistry there might be slightly different. So, number one, these objects coming through look different to some extent, not entirely, but they look different to some extent. That's number one. Number two, this particular one came in on the plane of our solar system, unlike the others, which here's the plane of our solar system. They come in like this and go out like that. This one's coming in along our solar system plane. Now, to understand the geometry, here's the galaxy disk that we're in, right? And here's the plane of our solar system. Here's our solar system. It's on an angle like this. Okay. However, if I turn my hand sideways, you can see that the object can cross the plane of our solar system from that angle. And that's exactly what's happened. It didn't come this way, it came this way. But remember, it's a circular solar system. So it doesn't matter. Either way, it's going to cut across our whole solar system. And that's what it did. If we deproject it to a flat plane, it came in slightly higher and it's going to go out slightly lower. But it did come in on the plane of our solar system. Now, that means that in this orientation, it came from, with this being the galactic disk, it came from the galactic disk. Okay, so the galactic disk then is an object or a location rather where there's tons of dust and other material, the stuff that stars are made of, the stuff that dark clouds are made of, and planets and so forth. So it stands to reason that it perhaps picked up different materials in its formation from a different star system. And when it finally came here, it went through our solar system on the plane of our solar system. And the chances of that happening were very, very slim, you know, far less than 1%, far less than 0.5%. So that makes it odd. And so it stood out immediately for that reason. The second reason it stood out is because it had a copious amount of carbon dioxide that it was giving off. Now that was strange because our comets here have some, but not as much as we saw. Again, I remind you, it again is an interstellar object. We didn't really know what to expect. Now we're learning, right? And then we saw nickel atoms being given off, and nickel ignited a whole furor about the fact that there was no iron in the mix. Well, wait a minute, where's the iron? Iron should be mixed in with nickel. Nickel and iron generally are together. In fact, they're so commonly together that we have something called a nickel iron ratio, Ni for nickel over iron, which is Fe. So the nickel to iron ratio was expected to be more or less in line with what we've seen with comets in our system. This wasn't. It was only nickel with a very, very few bits of iron in there. So how did that happen? And so that was an anomaly, which we think we've explained. However, the fact that it's coming through on the plane of our solar system, and also third anomaly, visited Mars, Venus after it went around the sun, and then on the way out, Jupiter up in March of 2026. That's pretty interesting because that sort of like is sort of like a threefer here. We're getting three strange anomalies with this object, and so uh, when Avi said it could be interstellar, potentially intelligent, I mean that's not an unreasonable assumption. What was unreasonable were all the people trying to make it into something we didn't even know that it was or wasn't. Okay, and so we saw a lot of that out there, and that was the purpose of his documentary, which was really well done.
Yeah, Darcy, maybe you can speak a little bit about the documentary. Avi Loeb is a central figure in it, and a lot of it pertains to the controversy surrounding some of his comments about the anomalous nature of Three Eye Atlas. He said things like that it appears to be resisting gravitational forces, or that its trajectory is so uncommon that it must have been intelligently planned. Can you take us through a little bit of what the controversy is surrounding his statements?
Yeah, I think Avi is a brilliant scientist, and obviously having the discussion about an interstellar object in itself is excellent for the public to focus on that. I love the fact that people are turning their attention to space, right? But when he first came out kind of saying the same sort of stuff as Muamua, that this is probably maybe a interstellar manufactured object from another solar system, from a ET race, that's when I was like, oh, well, what's the evidence to that, right? So he started talking about the size of it being abnormally large. Yes, that's true. But that doesn't equate to being a intergalactic spaceship, right? It's just a rare comet. We've never seen it before because we're only really starting to detect these types of things entering our solar system, at an exponential rate now because we have all this technology up there, right? And he started making some claims like that, there was a little bit of sort of like fear and speculation dropped in a lot of his claims. So he was talking about the stock market and how he spoke to traders that were going to, not short the market, but drop their investments on October 29th when it was going to be closest to Earth and stuff like that. So I don't know. It just seemed a lot more like some kind of entertainment aspect rather than sticking just to the brass tacks science. And some of the claims he made, which we highlight in the documentary, is that, oh, remember the WOW signal that came out in the 1970s, which was a 45-second clip that seemed intelligent. We never detected again after that in that quadrant of space, which is where the Sagittarius constellation sits. Well, he said, leading up to appearing on Joe Rogan, that, hey, this object came from the Sagittarius direction, right? And I think Mark addressed that and many other things that were claimed at the time that I had made this documentary, because the sensational claims didn't stop after I finished the doc. They're still going on. I mean, Mark was saying, and I think he can elaborate on that, just because something comes from a general direction in space doesn't mean that it was the origin of the WOW signal, because that region of space is massive. Mm-hmm. And the WOW signal itself, we have no indication what star it came from, what planet it came from. So it's anybody's best guess, right? So to make that claim, to fuel the fire of sensationalism and speculation, I think is kind of ridiculous and dangerous, especially when the woo UFO audience and the woo UFO entertainment networks that are used to picking up sensationalism like that and just throwing it into the UFO community to feed more drama and speculation, that was inevitable and it happened, So I think Mark has done a good job as an astronomer to address some of those things. But, since he went on Joe Rogan, he said, well, the outside of this object seems to be a manufactured substance. Hence, that seems to make it clear that it's probably like a spaceship or something. You know what I mean? And not really. Like, I don't think that makes any sense, especially when, one of the things, an earlier anomaly was this forward projecting tail from the comet, right? And as Mark explains very well, there's a coma that surrounds the comet as it enters a solar system because it starts heating up and it's expelling gases, right? That coma is full of all kinds of particles, dirt, dust, ice, gas. And this thing is abnormally large. Because of that, it has shown certain characteristics we haven't seen from small comets before, which would be a forward tail, like just a shine from the coma from the front, right? That was addressed by Avi as basically being some kind of deceleration jet from a spacecraft, like that type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no evidence of that. So I think that's the problem. Like, I'm excited that a massive rare comet has entered our solar system and is still here, right? We're in December. It's supposed to leave after December. Mm-hmm. But are there reptilians piloting the craft, as Gaia Entertainment has alluded to? I don't think so. Is it a spacecraft? I don't think so. Is it a distraction? I think so. Like, I think all those other things fuel this sort of like entertainment spectrum that makes the rest of the UFO phenomenon look silly.
Avi got a lot of media attention for his comments about Oumuamua a few years ago when that was discovered. But it seems like this 3i Atlas conversation has been taken to a whole new level and gotten a lot more media attention and a lot more discourse online. So maybe this question is for Mark. What makes 3i Atlas different from Oumuamua and that much more prone to speculation and discussion online?
Answer is actually quite simple. And the answer is we caught it earlier. Oumuamua we didn't catch until it was already leaving the solar system. So we only had a few weeks. This one we have months. And that allows for the news cycle to get filled with all kinds of correct and incorrect stuff. I always make a joke, you can't believe the people that get their degrees on Google. Okay. And a lot of people get their degrees on Google and then they pronounce and make these pronouncements online as if they're, have authority to do so when they haven't done the work. They just read someone else's posts or they look at someone else's video on YouTube, which can be anything under the sun. I have a problem with that, but it's okay. It's freedom of expression. They can say what they want, as long as the people that are reading it are reading it for entertainment purposes only. If they're trying to learn science, that stuff isn't going to help them. It's going to actually muddy the waters and make them confused. There's a lot of anomalies people say are with this 3i Atlas object, and I'm okay with there being anomalies. There's going to be a lot more, actually, because of the fact that this is interstellar. We've never seen, for this amount of time, an interstellar object and be able to study it for as long as we have. Now, the other night, or actually the other early morning, because I'm in the morning sky now, I opened up our Skytour Livestream telescope. We have one in Benson and one out in the Sonoran Desert, 200 miles northwest. And I photographed it. And I took it over a period of, an hour. And then I made a time lapse of it. And it's on our social media. It goes ding, 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 ding. You can actually watch it moving in the sky live, kind of live, semi-live. Everybody on the stream watched it go with us. They watched it move. And so they learned about it. It was green. Well, the green color is because of carbon compounds giving off this green emission, which is very characteristic of, cyanogen, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide with the carbon atoms. So this was a fascinating thing, and there's even a tail behind it. Now, that tail in the front of the comet, as Darcy said, we have a very, very large object that didn't look like it was prone to what would you call non-gravitational acceleration. Big word. What's it? Big words. What does it mean? When comets get heated up, they give off these jets of gas that pop out. Yeah, there it is. They give off these jets of gas which pop out, and they propel the comet one way or the other. So a comet's path isn't necessarily perfectly straight. It's going to kind of jiggle around in its path as it's moving because those jets are kind of pushing it around. Okay. Well, we weren't seeing that with this comet, yet we should have, because there was this massive coma or cloud, okay, around the nucleus of the comet. And that coma or cloud around the nucleus of the comet was something that was there because material was being propelled off of the comet's surface because of solar radiation. So what does that tell us? It told us that the object was more massive than we thought. Okay, we can accept that. Maybe it was 33 billion tons, as estimated, by Avi's team. And I put a lot of stock in his actual assessments because, he knows what he's doing. He is doing the research, and many of the other people aren't. And so I put stock in his research when he shows numbers like that. Some of the conclusions, okay, I don't necessarily agree with them. On his scale of 0 to 10, I think he had the comet at, was it a 6, Darcy? Is that what he had it at? Or is it, do you remember? I don't remember. But he had it at a fairly high rating to being potentially alien, where 10 is totally alien. I started it at a 4, and then I dropped it to a 3, then a 2, and then it was a 0 point something, in my view. But only because the comet was doing things that comets we're used to seeing were doing. And it started to do it late in the game, which means that a lot of the stuff that we normally see with comets happens earlier in their trajectory when they're coming around the sun. This one, it started late. What am I saying? What started? What started late was the change in the iron content in the spectrum of this comet. Okay, nickel can often be bound up with carbon monoxide molecules, which are a carbon atom and an oxygen atom. Okay, and the carbon atom and the oxygen atom can connect 4 times to a nickel atom, for instance, and you'll have something called nickel carbonyl. Okay, now that particular compound will vaporize and release the nickel atom at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, iron can do the same thing with carbon monoxide as well, and that's called iron pentacarbonyl, right? And it has 5 carbon monoxide groups attached to the iron atom. That doesn't vaporize until 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So if the nickel was bound up with the carbon monoxide, which we know was there, and the iron was bound up with the carbon monoxide, well, then it stands to reason that as the comet got closer to the sun, we'd start to see more iron, and we did. So the theory was kind of borne out that maybe the nickel and the iron were bound up with other things and released at different times.
And just to answer your question, Mark, it was a rating of 6 out of 10 on the scale of leaning towards an anomalous alien object. That still leaves a rumor percentage of 30 to 40% in Avi's team's estimation.
Yeah,
that is of natural origin.
Thank you.
Would that imply that he thought, with a 6 on 10 rating, he's implying that it is more likely than not that it is of extraterrestrial origin, or
actually,
that is of intelligent origin?
Yeah, actually, I believe that he himself, when asked directly, would tell you, well, it's probably likely a comet, but it's a very strange one. But look at these anomalies; these make it very interesting. That's probably how he'd answer it to you, And I don't think that that's the wrong opinion to have, because it had a lot of strange anomalies. However, one by one, these anomalies are able to be explained a little bit better now. And so, here's things that aren't happening. It's not heading for the Earth. No. It hasn't changed course rapidly. No. It hasn't suddenly changed its course due to the planet Jupiter and getting pulled by Jupiter in toward the Earth. I mean, these are all things I found. It doesn't look like the Doomsday weapon from Star Trek, the original series. That looked like a bugle. Remember the bugle crackers? Looked like a bugle. It was actually it was a cone. It would actually eliminate planets. Okay, it wasn't that at all. There have been no photographs of the nucleus of the comet because we can't see the nucleus of the comet. The only way we can see the nuclei of comets is if we go there. Okay, Giotto went to the nucleus of a comet. Okay, the Rosetta spacecraft went to the nucleus of Churyumov-Gerasimenko, which is another comet, and it actually sent a probe down to the surface of the comet. It looked like a kidney bean. A really incredible thing, but that's the first time we actually saw the nuclei of a comet directly like that with such unprecedented resolution. And so, in other words, we can't see the nucleus of the comet. We don't know what's in there. All right. And the reason is because of this coma, this cloud of dust given off by the comet. But I have to say, it's acting more like a comet than like a spacecraft. And when it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, So that's
probably duck.
Probably, can't quack.
So I just wanted to add one thing there, Rob. Sorry. All those photos that Ivan was bringing up are legitimate scientifically captured photos of.
If I could just stop you for 1 second. There's some buzzing in the audio, Mark. If you're able to jiggle your wire or something, because it's getting louder.
I don't know why that's happening. That isn't happening. I don't know why. Do you still hear it? Because
it's.
There we go. Okay, well,
he's on mute. That solves it temporarily. So continue with your point, Darcy.
Yeah. So all of those photos that were brought up before by Ivan, the producer of the show, are demonstrably captured by real, photography instrumentation here on the planet or out in space. The problem with the woo speculation on this object that has fueled a firestorm within the UFO community that this is actually an alien spacecraft and it has reptilians on the way is the fact that there's so many bogus photos and videos that have been published that make it look like that bugle that Mark was talking about, or Christina Gomez has, I think, about 6 or 7 of them published at this point on her channel, basically saying, yeah, this is the imagery that we're getting, and it looks like a spaceship, right? That's a problem because all of the state-of-the-art technology is capturing it looking like a comet with like a coma or a tail, and then the disinformation is fed into the community by more entertainers and such that say, no, this is actually a spacecraft. It's hollow. There's all this evidence that it's, being piloted by reptilians and so on and so forth. Can you kind of address some of these photos and videos that have been published, Mark?
First of all, I think that many of the photos that are produced by people out there that show this object are created with AI. Some of them being created with AI, some of them not. Some of them were even less involved. They actually took snippets off of television shows and produced them. So again, when you put up our comet, the time lapse that I did, that's what a comet looks like to us. It looks like, from an Earth-based telescope, it looks like a fuzzy ball with a potential tail. Okay, not all comets have tails, right? And they're not as obvious. So in the case of this particular comet, which is what I'm calling it because I think that's exactly what it is, there were people that just basically said, I need more clicks. I'm going to put a YouTube video out that says this is a spaceship, and I'm going to end up becoming somebody on YouTube now. And I hate to say it that way, but there's people that are just taking advantage of it. I'll give you an example. When Halley's Comet came around 2 times ago in the 1800s, there was an astronomer named Flammarion. And Flammarion said, it's a historic record. He said, well, comet tails and comets give off cyanide, which they do. And that cyanogen compound will glow green, like we see. And that's a carbon and a nitrogen atom together in pairs. Well, he said that, and immediately, they didn't have the internet to start spreading around photos. Okay, there were people that created comet pills and had medicines you could take to prevent the cyanide from killing you if the Earth passed through the tail of Halley's Comet. And it was like, okay, you can see how the hoaxers and people that take advantage of a situation were alive and well even back then.
Yeah, no shortage of people who are willing to take advantage of a good situation. I'm wondering, is there a benefit to drumming up so much talk, in the sense that, isn't it good that more people are interested in space and following these stories, even if it's got a little bit of a controversial tone to it? Avi Loeb is definitely doing a good job of getting people talking. Is there a silver lining to this, that, at least more people are showing interest, even if it's got a little bit of a controversial context to it?
Yeah, I agree that, what Avi is saying, he does what I like to do, and that's bring people into the discussion. And he's making it reachable by doing the research. But he's doing real astrophysics research and solar system research on this object. It's not like he's a hack, The people that are producing the videos that say it's something else and purport to show these images, they're the hacks, okay? And I know that Avi's gotten short with a few people about this. And, the truth is, I can understand why he would, because it's like, he's the guy doing the research. He's the reason that people are making up all this stuff, to be honest. And so I understand his being upset. I don't agree with some of his conclusions. I don't believe that this is an interstellar spacecraft. I did think in the beginning that because of the rarity of that trajectory, all right, and the fact that there was no iron, I thought, well, that's interesting. This object, this could be it. Maybe this is something interstellar and of intelligence, of an alien intelligence. I would have loved to have seen that. However, as it came closer and as we did more observations, everything that I saw about it says, well, it's more likely just a more massive comet than we're used to. It's doing comet things. In other words, it does what comets do.
There's one question in the comments that I think is valid and worth bringing up. If the comet has jets, let's call them, or is emitting something at a certain angle, even if it is tumbling or rotating through space, how would that be possible? That the jets seem to be coming off in one direction.
I don't think they're coming off in one direction. In fact, I don't know what the rate of rotation is of the nucleus, but if it's slow, then that makes perfect sense. Now the jets also facing the sun, they're the only ones that are going to get heated up. When the comet goes to the backside, well, then they're not going to throw off anything. But if jets are coming out relatively evenly on the entire comet, then every time that particular comet's face comes around to the sun, that part will start emanating jets. And we can't tell the difference of one jet to another. So it could just be that it's the same process occurring with different locations on the same nucleus as it's rotating.
Darcy's documentary mentioned that Avi Loeb has written 9 scientific papers in 2 months on this object. And as we noted before, just because somebody writes a scientific paper doesn't mean that it's necessarily valid if it hasn't been reviewed or confirmed. What's your take on that? Is he in some way rushing through his research, or do you think that he's really taking every proper step to research this as it should be?
My take on it is that he's a very considered and excellent researcher. I don't think in any way that he's rushing things. I think he's just producing findings. I will say this. Normally, when we see data from objects, they don't see the light of day for many months. However, in this particular case, this object's not going to be around for many more months. So I think it makes sense that he's, bringing out stuff now, but he's not saying anything, literally not saying anything that is so, I would say, controversial. He's making observations that are an honest observation. Okay, if we're seeing nickel, well, maybe it's a spacecraft made of nickel, and we're seeing a bladed nickel atoms coming off of the surface. If that was the case, then that's a speculation. That's the kind of thing that maybe you kind of keep to yourself initially. So I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that was the best thing to say. But I will say that he's a very considered researcher, very careful. But more than others, and I'm very, very happy that he is doing this, more than others, is willing to take that stand and say, we are going to see interstellar alien intelligence at some point. I believe that too. I also believe, as an astronomer, I believe they could be here. My most popular lecture I give all over the country is one about the ability for creatures to get here using advanced physics. And it's not so much science fiction anymore. So I think it makes sense that he talks about it. We all harbor these ideas and thoughts. Every one of us thinks there might be life out there, and some of us think it might be here now already from other places. I'm one of them. I go on record as saying that I have for many years. But I will say that for hearing him do it, that actually helps everybody. But what happens is people will, make fun of the guy. They'll poo-poo it. They'll say, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about." And how do they know? Are they doing the research? No, they're just armchair enthusiasts who just want to make an opinion and get clicks in some of their videos, So they do anti-Avi rants and things like that. I've seen a bunch of those. It's like, that's ridiculous. Okay. Let science speak. In the end, it all comes out. And, there's a lot of claims, a lot of research from a lot of different disciplines, not just astronomy, astrophysics, and so forth, where people make these claims that are disputed and then proven to be different in the end. And that's what I think is going to happen with this one.
Do you think that the scientific community, generally speaking, is too conservative or maybe lacks imagination or something to not be able to embrace certain ideas like this?
Boy, do I know that. Yes. And let me quick story. When I was getting my degree in astronomy, I had an argument with the director of the observatory where I was doing my research. And I told him it's a populated universe. I said, I believe it's a populated universe. And I talked to him. I said, well, here's why. We're carbon-based. We're bilaterally symmetric. Same on the left, same on the right. Every single creature on this planet shows symmetry of some kind, whether it's radial symmetry, bilateral symmetry, pentamerism, like starfish, five-sided symmetry. And they're carbon-based, and they require oxygen. It stands to reason, with carbon being the fourth most abundant element in the entire universe, okay, let that sink in, fourth most abundant, that life is most likely going to develop as carbon-based. So, if that's the case, there's probably going to be life elsewhere, I told him. And he looks at me and he's nodding, and he wears these glasses. He wore these glasses down over his nose like this, and he goes, Mr. D'Antonio, get back in the observatory, get back on your project, and leave Captain Kirk to us. And I was like, okay, all right. And, then when 1988 rolled around, I got my degree in 83, so yes, I'm dating myself here. In 88, I went back after the first exoplanet, the first one, was discovered and confirmed. I went back into his office. I walked into the observatory. The creaky wood floors of this 1800s building really smelled the musty books in the library. I go to his office. He's on the phone, bellowing as usual. I peek around the corner. I hadn't talked to him now in since 83, 5 years. Okay. I peek around the corner. He looks up at me, and without missing a beat, he covers up the phone, and he says, "It was only one planet." It
So
was like
defensive.
I lived rent free in his head for 5 years. He must have known I was going to come back, you know. So anyway, that was really a fun interaction. And since then, of course, now we're well over 5,500 and climbing. I'm part of an exoplanet program with Las Cumbres Observatories. I have my own observatory, so we're doing research there too, and work to just dispense astronomy to as many people as we can get it to. So it's interesting to hear the perspective of academia, like you say. You know, are they more closed-minded? Yes, generally they are, but it's changing, and that's to go back to your earlier question. That's one of the reasons, one of the things that Avi's doing for the community. He's actually starting to open up difficult conversations that traditionally academia doesn't want to talk about. And he's opened those conversations up finally.
Right. And you guys are both aware of the ongoing UAP disclosure scenario that is unfolding. I've spoken to people who have also said that primarily they don't believe that this object is of alien origin because they wouldn't travel that way across the universe. It's traveling way too slow. And if you look at the anomalies that we see right here on Earth, you know, with the UAPs that are documented, more information coming out all the time from whistleblowers and people in the military, et cetera. Does that influence the opinion either way on whether this 3I Atlas object is intelligently an alien spacecraft or not, or whatever you want to call it?
Well, for sure. I mean, if you consider also that even we, puny humans, okay, have come up with a solar sail concept where we could deploy a giant sail and let the solar radiation push us along. We could actually end up being propelled up to, you know, a good proportion of the speed of light. And so if we did that, we would be long advanced beyond solar sails by the time our solar sail ever found another star system potentially. So is it possible that this was one of those solar sails like Avi might have suggested Oumuamua was? Now, at the beginning, considering its path, yes, but the trouble is it looked like it's about 7 billion years old. And the trouble with that is that our solar system is only 4.6 billion years old. So it wasn't here when that thing was launched. Okay. So that makes it less likely that they're saying, hey, let's go there. Right. I mean, because that there wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So that's interesting. Now, as far as the actual disclosure program, the travel, aliens wouldn't travel that way. I don't think. I think they would use what is an interdimensional travel motif. It's something that I've talked with Darcy about a number of times, and this interdimensional travel is something that doesn't live within our standard model of physics yet. Our standard model deals with 4 dimensions, X, Y, and Z moving through time. Okay. If we could get out of those 4 and go into a 5th dimension, okay, out here, there's a 5th dimension if we consider string theory. Now, string theory is a new physics that we're investigating, and there's more evidence of it than before, but it's still not codified yet. We're not really sure how it would fit into our standard model, if at all. So it's something that is going to end up coming into being, kicking and screaming when it does. But consider that we consider the fact that we can use these extra dimensions in physics. There's a 5th dimension in one of the variations of this string theory concept, and it's called Randall-Sundrum 1 or RS1. Well, in RS1, basically, you can leave your 4 dimensions and go into a 5th dimension. That 5th dimension is a universe that's a lot more small around you. The farther in you go, it's exponential. The farther in you go, the smaller it gets around you. So if you travel 1 foot in our 4 dimensions, you go 12 inches. If you go deep into that 5th dimension, all right, and travel that same 12 inches measured by you with a ruler in there, Well, when that comes out, because it's compressed space that you're dealing with, that's going to extend into the full size of the actual distance you just traveled. So that 1 foot could translate to, say, from here to Pluto, or from here to the moon or whatever, depending on how far in you go. You go really deep into it, all right? And maybe you can just in a few hops get to Alpha Centauri, and the calculation that was done by a Stanford professor was something on the order of 20 minutes to get to Alpha Centauri using this technology. Now, it just needs power, right? And that's a huge, and say just, right? We'd laugh.
Yeah, simple.
Well, it's simple. Just put more power, more cowbell, Well, interstellar cowbell runs on something that's really, really, powerful. So how do you get that energy? Well, the idea with this, to make the particular system that would actually allow you to make these jumps in and out of our 4 dimensions, you can do multiples. You can go into 4 and then back into 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, and just make these hops. Now, the way that works is you will vanish literally from the XYZ coordinate you're sitting at. Boom, you're gone. Literally, you can touch it. It's not there anymore. But then you reappear at another coordinate, because you're not actually doing anything but leaving the 4 dimensions, going into a 5th dimension for a bit, and then reappearing at another dimensional point. And you don't travel a distance from that other point to the previous point you were at. So you actually just go from here to the 5th to the new coordinate. That's a different thought process, a different mental gymnastics that you have to go through to see that happen. But if we can do that, and RS1, the Randall-Sundrum 1 variant of string theory, says we can, then that's how aliens can possibly travel the universe. And they don't need engines. All they need to do is have an exit point from our 4 dimensions and an entry point at the new location. So what that would mean is they're the best cartographers in the universe, because they would know all the entry points. Oops, it's not a star. Nope, that's not a moon that we're going to hit, or a planet. Okay, they would know the entry points. That's really important. And so this takes out of the equation the vast gulf between the stars that we always deal with. It removes that, because we're no longer dealing with our 4-dimensional universe. I mean, at the fastest speed we've ever traveled, it took us 10 years to get to Pluto. 10 years. Okay. Now, we could get to Pluto in 2 minutes. There will be a day when we use, say, this RS1 variation in a spacecraft, and we make these particles that surround our ship, okay, and we go to Pluto for lunch and come back. And you say, did I see Sputnik Planitia today? Yes, I did, on Pluto. So that time will show up. That will be here. Now, it's interesting because CERN overseas is actually investigating these specific particles that you would surround your ship with to go interstellar. Okay. And those particles are called Kaluza-Klein gravitons, as I've said to Darcy a few times. I think I've talked about it in this documentary too. And those particles are being investigated at CERN. They have a detector called Atlas, just kind of like the name of the program of telescopes that found this comet. And the Atlas detector, in part, is looking for these Kaluza-Klein particles that would be used to do this travel. And so they're actually actively looking for it. And now, why would they spend tens of millions of dollars to build a detector to look for this hypothetical particle? And the answer is because it's really interesting and could spell the difference between being close to home and being far from home.
With that good context as background, I'm going to flip it back to Darcy for this one. We referenced the UAP disclosure initiatives that have been kind of going on, and with all of the anomalous UAP activity that we see right here on Earth, do you think that's where more people's focus should be, on discovering what's going on right in our own front yard, as opposed to what's happening out there in the rest of the solar system?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because if you look at Avi Loeb's activity, I know that at one point he was trying to set up observatories or detection systems all around. I think it was part of the United States where he was setting these up, and the quest was to detect authentic UAP in our atmosphere, or, maybe within Earth orbit, something like that. It didn't really go too far. But, if you probe him and say, what about all this testimony, pictures, video, radar contacts, whatever, anomalies that have been detected over the past 80 years and, have been brought forward under different sort of whistleblowers or former Air Force or, Navy personnel, whatever, what have you, regarding the UAP or UFO anomalies. And he'll say, I'm not concerned with that data. I'm only concerned with picking up new data that I can vet, right? I think there is a bit of a problem with that, because I think if this phenomenon is here and there is a non-human intelligence, as Mark was kind of alluding to there, that he believes they have visited and they're probably using some kind of physics that we haven't discovered yet, we should be looking into these anomalies to try and prove that, right? And we should be open to the fact that we're not alone in the universe. I am. But unfortunately, it's kind of like this push and pull where Avi wants to discount the sort of UFO community stuff, but only validate his stuff. And I find there to be a bit of a problem with that. I've spoken with him once before on this other YouTube channel podcast by Tim, UFO Man. And I was just asking about, general prosaic problems with the Muamua at the time. And he was pretty aggressive against that. But I will say one of these anomalies that somebody brought up in the chat, maybe you can address this, Mark, was the rumor that supposedly the object has turned now, 3I Atlas, and is moving towards Jupiter. And then there's like all this speculation and frenzy around it dropping probes, which I don't think we can prove. But what do you think about its supposed turn or movement towards Jupiter recently?
Thank you. It's on a hyperbolic trajectory. Now, if you remember geometry class in high school, there's a shape, you have a circle, you have an ellipse, you have a parabola, and you have a hyperbola, which is another open curve. And it's on an open curve, and it is turning, but it's turning within the expectations of gravitational attraction and its trajectory as expected. It's not making unwarranted turns that we don't understand. It's not looking like it's a powered craft. And it's moving toward Jupiter only because Jupiter's tug is tugging on it. I mean, you've got the sun and you've got Jupiter primarily in our solar system. And so Jupiter's pulling a little bit toward it. And so it's going to pass closer to Jupiter around the middle of March or so. The problem is that when people hear a little bit, they think they know a lot, and they're coming out with this stuff and saying, they're coming out with this stuff and saying, hey, it's turning toward Earth now, or coming toward Jupiter, or whatever. And I've heard it's going to collide with Jupiter. I heard it's going to collide with Earth. Okay, all right. I heard all these stories. But the fact of the matter is, it's actually just on its hyperbolic trajectory, and it's following the path we expect it to follow. I don't see any research indicating that it's suddenly making turns that we don't expect.
Just to finish it off with you guys, what can we expect looking forward into the next little while? I know that the object is making its closest. It's going to be the closest to Earth in a couple of weeks, I believe, around December 19th. It'll be at its closest proximity to Earth. And then, as you mentioned, it'll be passing by Jupiter next March. What can we expect to learn about it between now and then?
We're probably going to learn an awful lot about it. We're going to take more spectra of it and be able to see hopefully I'll have our spectrograph system set up in one of our observatories to actually take a spectrum of it ourselves. There's a lot of unanswered questions about it, like what is its actual mass? How much did it lose when it run around the sun? Did that nucleus actually break up? There was a pretty significant brightening of it when it went around the sun. And those aren't headlights. Those aren't lights. What it is potentially that nucleus, which is fairly large in our earlier estimation, might have broken up. And then every one of those little objects is now open on all sides and can spew more debris, gas, and dust. And thus the comet would brighten quite a lot from that breakup. So we're going to study that to see if it actually changes and either gets down to the point where we can actually identify separate objects in some way. There's a possibility that we could do that. There might be other spacecraft we can bring to bear on this potentially. I know that the Martian, let's say it was the ExoMars, I think it was, that in the HiRISE that imaged it. And then Perseverance actually took a kind of a photo in the sky at one point, they said. But that was at Mars, as it went by Mars early on. And of course, those just fueled the flames because people said, oh, look, it's very bright, or it's elongated because it was a time exposure. And when you take a picture of a moving object, it makes a dash on your screen.
Makes a streak.
It makes a streak, correct, yeah. And so, unfortunately, we have that to contend with as well. So that if you look forward, we're going to try to actually figure out more details about what interstellar comets look like. Borisov was one that came through, not as big as this one. So, and when Gennady Borisov found his comet, he was basically an amateur. And most amateurs, amateur comet hunters, like Levy, David Levy, they spend night after night just using their telescopes scanning a portion of the sky. Well, now we have the Atlas system, and the Atlas system has 3 main telescope installations, with a 4th one going in Spain soon. And they're going to be scanning the skies at all times, all different directions, all looking around to kind of give us that early warning. And that early warning proved profitable and fruitful with 3i Atlas, because the Atlas system did discover this 3rd interstellar object when it was out at Jupiter. In fact, when it was out by, I say Jupiter's orbit, when it was over 5 astronomical units away, it caught it. And then we turned our Skytour telescopes toward it when it was way out there back in August. And we imaged it. It was in the stars of Sagittarius, as Darcy was saying. Excuse me. And we imaged it actually out there. And what do we see? Well, I had the stars of Sagittarius, all right, and nothing else in there was just stars of Sagittarius in a very narrow field. And then over a few minutes, we saw this dash appearing, this dash line. And that dash line was 3i Atlas moving slowly but surely. And it took several minutes at that point because it was moving so distant and so few some small amount of sky every second. So we had to leave it open for a while to actually get an image, But now it's closer. And on December 19th, as you rightly point out, it's going to be closest to Earth. We may be doing a special program with another company that day to actually bring 3i Atlas to everybody live again, like I did this past early morning. But we're going to do that as well. And that's going to probably hopefully answer questions. Of course, the James Webb's going to look at it again. The Hubble's going to look at it again. And so we're going to task these scopes with the task to actually bring this thing out of the dark and figure out exactly what it's doing and so forth. I think all the questions will be answered because, again, it's a very odd object. We've never seen a comet this size before.
Cool. Looking forward to learning more about that. A couple interesting comments to wrap it up. One commenter says, much like UAP, where non-experiencers have taken over and are pushing their own narrative, non-scientists are jumping in and taking over 3i Atlas. I don't think that's, surprising, just because those voices outnumber the scientists by such a vast margin that, of course, it's going to just take up a lot of space. It just kind of comes with the territory, so to speak. Another viewer says, I think if nothing else, 3i has more people looking up now, and from an impactor point of view, the more the merrier. And I agree with that sentiment.
So do I. I think that's a very good sentiment. And like I said, you got to put up with the people that get their degrees on Google, or YouTube. And some of the opinions aren't bad opinions. I mean, some people are smart, and actually, even though they don't have a degree in astronomy, they say some things that even I learned from. I do. I mean, I take everything people say and then look at it from a point of view as, well, could that be true? I don't say that's not true. I say, could that be true? And then when I analyze their statements, I can either prove or disprove to my satisfaction whether it's true or not.
Do we have like 2 minutes, minute? What are we at?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Whatever you got.
I'll add a couple of things. So, to your earlier question, I think from now until this object has left our solar system, the kind of woo media speculation, entertainment part of the UFO community will continue to drum up falsehoods and speculation that leads nowhere and just distracts people. So I'll make that claim. I'll also say that, one of the Gazbo Pilot 1 he said that Avi should talk to Bea, meaning Beatrice Villarreal. They were associated. She was part of the Vasco project. About 3 years ago, she was connected up to Project Galileo, but they kind of went their own ways. I'll let Beatrice explain that on her own, but I know of this. I've spoken to her before. I think that there are a bunch of anomalies that have been stated by Avi regarding the 3i Atlas. These all can be explained by normal prosaic scientific explanations, and they eventually will all be out there. Just be careful that, you don't have your mind so open that your brain falls right out of your skull and you get taken by some of these speculations that are essentially falsehoods. So, I really appreciate the conversation today. And I think people should check out Skytour, which Marc does astronomy, practical astronomy tests and live photography and stuff. Should check out his channel and follow him.
Absolutely.
You. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And our portal is skytourlive.org if anybody wants to just come to the site and check out what we do. And it's on YouTube. It's Skytour Livestream with Marc D'Antonio. We've been active for about 4 years, maybe a little more. And so, we bring everybody into the conversation, right? I mean, people want to learn astronomy, but they don't think they know enough to get involved because the science is over my head, no pun intended. But it is, right? I mean, to many people. But it just takes a little bit of an understanding to help to bring people into the conversation. And that's what I like to do. I like to see people who don't know much about astronomy go, wow, I get it. I win. When that happens, I win. I mean, I feel good about that. And that's what I do.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'll link to Marc's Skytour site down in the description of this video, so you can go check that out. Also, be sure to check out Darcy's docs on the Unveiled channel. And while you're at it, check out the Unveiled Podcast, which is over on the WatchMojo YouTube channel for more interviews with me and the experts that I bring on the show. So without further ado, thank you both. It was a great pleasure, and I'll see you guys all next time.